DND number 6, The Worth of Souls in Jesus' Name, Chapter 5. Marissa came flying into the den. "Dad," she cried, "why didn't you tell me? I told you I want to know everything that's going on. Why didn't you tell me?" Talman Daly politely excused himself from the group of people he'd been meeting with. His publicist and campaign manager nodded politely. The FBI agent stepped back to observe. Marion remained seated in her special chair, as she had been for hours. "Marissa, honey," Talman said, putting his arm around his daughter, "I didn't want to upset you." "Upset me? I've been more than upset already. Don't you know that I want to know that Mick might be alive? I just heard a report on the news. Do you think she got away? Do you think she's alive?" "Sweetheart, it's hard to say. I don't want you to get your hopes up." Impatient with the way her father always tried to placate her, she pulled away and approached the agents. "What do you think? Did she get away? I've got to know. Please tell me." Agent Dodge smiled kindly. "It's possible. Dogs have tracked her from the cabin where she'd been held through the woods to a home a few miles south. We'll have more information very soon. We're tracking down the owner of the house now." "She's alive," Marissa said defiantly. "I know she is." She turned toward her father. "She's alive, so stop telling me not to get my hopes up." She spun on her heel and left the room. Talman joined the group again, apologizing for the interruption. "It's no problem," Agent Dodge answered. "She's upset. That's understandable. After all, they are sisters," the agent said pointedly. "Everyone who loves Mackenzie is upset." Talman's eyes narrowed in anger. What was he trying to imply? He wasn't sure he liked the attitude of this guy. Maybe a call to his superior officer would bring him down a peg or two. Looking around, he smiled congenially at the group. "Of course, I've been trying to shield her from the whole ugly affair. I suppose at her age, she'd only see that as me trying to keep things from her." He sighed dramatically. "I've already raised one teenager. You'd think I'd know better by now." He shook his head sadly for effect, then looked up. "Back to what I was saying. I want to be kept informed of every move the Bureau makes. Whatever information you uncover about the owner of the house, I want to know it. Our daughter means everything to us, so I'm sure you can understand." A cell phone went off. Agent Dodge placed it up to his ear. "Dodge," he said gruffly. Agent Dodge's eyes made brief contact with his partner as he backed away from the group. He placed his hand over the phone as he nodded at Daly. Personal call. I'd better take it in the other room. Excuse me." Talman shook his head as the agent left the room. "We're in the middle of trying to find my daughter, and he's getting personal calls. Such incompetence shouldn't be tolerated." "I'm sure he won't be but a minute," Agent Stevens put in. Looking for a place to have a private conversation, Agent Dodge slipped into the large kitchen. However, it was occupied by the housekeeper, who was arranging small cups of coffee on a silver tray. She looked up at him, startled by his presence. "May I help you, sir?" she asked politely. "I'm sorry to bother you. I just wanted to step out for some fresh air," he said, nodding toward the kitchen door. He opened the back door and stepped out onto a gorgeously landscaped veranda, complete with a pond and a fountain. It was early evening and getting dark, but the place had lighting around the whole setup, so he was able to see his way. He walked around the back side of the fountain, out into the grass, making sure he was alone. "Okay, sir, I'm clear. Fill me in." The agent was silent as he listened to his superior, offering occasional yes sirs and curses. "What you're telling me," he finally said, "fits exactly with what I'm seeing. The old man says all the right things, but he's cold and hard as a slab of concrete. It doesn't surprise me a bit that he planned the whole thing, and yet I doubt you're going to find a connection between the dead man and the senator. He's too smart for that. Pull his phone records, pull his bank records, see what we can find." He listened again for some time before he spoke. "It's a stretch to think that he planned her kidnapping and death for publicity alone. Don't you think, well, if he wanted her dead for whatever reason, he's going to be anxious to find her and finish the job. We can feed him some info and see how he responds. Hopefully we can give him enough rope to hang himself." "Yes, sir. Will do." Ending the call, he slipped the phone into his jacket pocket and made his way back inside. He didn't see the young girl, curled up in the elaborate tree house just above his head. Marissa wiped the tears from her face while the gist of what she just heard swirled around in her mind. It sounded as if the agent was saying something that just couldn't be true. Her father was a hard man, she knew that, and he'd been particularly hard on Mick, which had always bothered her, yet she'd never thought that he would actually be involved in her sister's disappearance. Her mind worked hard trying to find another explanation for what she'd overheard. He wouldn't really hurt Mick, would he? And then she remembered he had hurt her. There had been an incident just before her sister had left the house. Marissa had been 5 or 6, and she'd run into Mickey's room to tell her all about being student of the month at school. When Marissa had burst through the door, she'd found her father standing in the middle of Mickey's room, his hair all messed up, breathing hard, the breast pocket on his suit coat torn and hanging down, and he was in the process of taking off his belt. Then she'd heard a sound from the corner of the room and shifted her gaze. Mick stood in the corner, also breathing hard, blood trickling from her nose. "Marissa, go on now. I'll be out in a minute," he said to her, his voice the same calm, stern voice she'd always known. "What's happening?" she'd asked stupidly, as if she didn't know. Yet she had known. Her sister had spoken then. Marissa now remembered clearly how her voice shook. It made Marissa want to burst out crying now, 10 years later. "Baby girl," Mickey had said, "do me a favor, sweetie, and run ask Miss Dora to get us a little picnic together. I thought you might like to have dinner with me in the park tonight." Marissa had looked to her father, who'd nodded. She then slowly backed out of the room and closed the door. She'd gotten all the way to the stair landing when she'd heard the loud swack and then a little whimpering sound. Until this minute, she'd blocked all of this out of her mind. Suddenly, she realized her father loved her, but he'd never had feelings for Mick. And now it sounded as if he'd planned Mick's kidnapping. And if he did, then her sister dead. Then is her sister dead, or had she actually escaped somehow? And if she was still alive, what would happen to her? And more importantly, what could Marissa do to help her sister? She needed more information. New scene. Jeff's arm snaked around Mickey instinctively, pulling her away from the door while he looked through the peephole. Sighing in relief, he unlocked the door. Mickey stood back as Jeff admitted a huge man into the room. He had to be 6'8", Mickey thought, with a Hulk Hogan physique. He had long, scraggly black hair, a beard and mustache, 2 earrings in one ear, and a gold tooth. And he wore jeans and a sleeveless shirt and big clunky boots. And he smiled broadly at her, showing off dimples and the twinkle in his eyes. Locking the door behind the man, Jeff held out his hand. "It's good to see you, man," Jeff said. "The heck with that," the man said. He dropped a large canvas bag on the floor and crushed Jeff to him in a giant bear hug. Jeff grunted, then chuckled as the man let him go. "Mickey, this is Jack. He's a good friend and an Ameritech agent." "Hi," Mickey said brightly, offering her hand, which Jack took and gently pressed between his 2 large paws. "Hello, beautiful," Jack said, his eyes filled with concern. "You doing okay?" She smiled warmly at him. "I'm okay, thanks to Jeff. I don't know what would have happened if not for him." "Well, right time, right place is how I see it," Jack answered. "And he was there, and you are safe, so no reason to wonder what would have happened." Jeff laughed at the puzzled look on Mickey's face. "Jack's just a big old teddy bear. At Ameritech, keeping everyone positive and focused on good things is one of Jason's priorities. Jason is a very strong Christian, a very positive guy, and also incorporates Zendo-Ryu into everything." "Zendo-Ryu?" Mickey asked. "The complete school of thought. It's Grandmaster Kino's art. Jason believes it can be applied to everything. So, Jason not only incorporates the normal skills and training like martial arts and marksmanship and criminology, but also high science, the newest technologies, and anything spiritual," Jack added. "Yeah, but Jack here is much better at positive thinking than I am," Jeff said. "Well, Jeff's major talent is in marksmanship. He's what they call a crack shot, or an expert sharpshooter, or like I like to say, a hot shot." "Whatever," Jeff said with a grin. "Jack's mind is uncanny. He has what I call amazing luck, and he says it's all from the uncluttered way he thinks. It's not luck. I'm just truly blessed. God is good. Give it a try, Mackenzie. You won't regret it. He grabbed the canvas bag from the floor and tossed it onto Jeff's bed. Okay, let's see what Santa Claus brought for you. Mickey watched as Jack began pulling items out of the bag and handing them to Jeff for inspection. Two lethal-looking guns, ammo, a leather shaving kit filled with money, lots of money, cell phones, some computer chip-looking things, a small microphone-type thing, and finally a styrofoam dummy head sporting a long, curly, blonde wig covered in plastic. This last item he handed to Mickey. Eyebrows raised, she took the offered item, looking it over with obvious distaste. Well, it's safer to change your appearance. It's either the wig or change your actual hair, and I didn't think you'd want to do that, Jeff said. I guess not, she said quietly. She set the dummy carefully on the counter in the little dressing area, removed the plastic, and fluffed the hair out while Jack and Jeff spoke quietly. Turning, Mickey watched them talk. They exchanged keys. Next, Jeff plugged one of the chips into his phone, copied the pictures he'd taken from his phone onto the chip, and then handed it back to Jack. Pics of Mackenzie and the scene at the cabin, he said. Jack nodded, and Mickey's mind flashed to what pictures were on that chip. Pictures of her all bloody when Jeff first found her. Pictures of the cabin of Butch and Richard, lying there with a gash in his throat. Even though she knew that Jeff and Jack were in the same room with her, it seemed as if they were very far away. Their voices sounded as if they were coming to her from deep inside a tunnel. She was tired, she realized, so very tired, and suddenly all she wanted to do was lie down and sleep. Her head began to spin, and she reached out to steady herself against the wall. Her eyes closed while she tried to get her bearing. It dawned on her briefly that she was passing out. She felt strong arms wrap around her, and then her feet were no longer on the floor. Drawing a deep breath, she knew it was Jeff holding her. It was the same smell from early that morning when he carried her into the house. She wanted to bury her nose against his skin and stay there forever. When her eyes fluttered open, she realized they were all alone, and Jeff was sitting beside her on the bed, pulling the covers up over her shoulders. What happened? She asked. I think the day has just caught up to you. Sleep now. You won't leave? I promise. I'll be right here. Mickey's eyes drifted shut. New scene. Either it was still dark outside or the insulated curtains over the single window did a heck of a good job. Mickey stretched her arms over her head and realized immediately they were secured there. Gasping in panic, she tugged on the restraints and felt the cold metal, heard the jangle of the cuffs against the headboard. Terror had her heart pounding, had her throat clogged, had her eyes tearing. Lifting her head, she searched for her protector, but he wasn't anywhere to be found. No, she cried, no, this can't be. Then the door to the bathroom opened, letting light into the room. Mickey watched in horror as Richard stepped up to the bed, his stare filled with accusations and hatred. Her eyes went to his hand, which he had clamped to the side of his neck, blood oozing out from under it. His knees hit the end of the bed, then eased up onto it. Mickey tried to scream, but the sound froze in her throat. Eyes wide in horror, she watched as he crawled his way up toward her. His blood dropped in spatters on the spread, and then on her chest as he loomed over her. Richard pulled his hand away from his throat, revealing a gaping black hole, and Mickey screamed. Jeff sprang from his bed and flew to Mickey's side, grabbed her, and pulled her into his lap. Her arms swung at his face, her feet kicked at him. She fought hard, but he was able to wrap his arms around her and press her against her head against his mouth so that he could talk into her ear. I've got you, Mickey. Come on now. Wake up. It's me. It's Jeff. Shh, now, honey. Wake up. Oh, wake up, okay? Her motion slowed, then her body stiffened, and she opened her eyes. She still gasped for air, even though she'd stopped fighting him. Jeff? Yes, Mickey, it's me. You had a nightmare. It's okay. You're safe. I've got you. He was here. Jeff held her tight and rocked her back and forth. Who was here? Richard. He was here, and he was angry for what I did to him. He was on top of me. It was a dream. I'm losing my mind, she whimpered. No, you're having a normal reaction to a horrible experience. He held her silently until he could feel her body start to relax and her respiration slow. She sniffed loudly. This is ridiculous. I am not a sniveling, sissy type of girl. I swear I'm not. What's happening to me? Your actions are normal, sweetie. Believe me, I know. He leaned over and scooted her off his lap and back onto the bed, and then stood and fetched her a glass of water. Here, drink this. Taking the plastic cup, she sipped some water, then looked up with half a smile. Why do people always do that? Do what? When someone's upset, people are always offering them a glass of water. He smiled. Well, there's actually something behind that. Doing something relatively normal and mundane helps to bring you back to a functioning level. In this case, your body remembers drinking water thousands of times, and it helps to align your emotions. You do feel better, don't you? Sniffing, she nodded her head. I think so. Leaning over, he pulled the covers back up over her. You need to rest. When he started to pull away, she grabbed his hand. Wait, Jeff, please. I don't want to be alone. Will you stay with me? What I mean is, will you hold me? God, I know it sounds so wimpy, but I can't seem to help it. Jeff swallowed hard and ran a hand over his bare chest and tugged on the shorts he wore. Of course I will. Sighing, he sat down on the side of her bed. Scoot over, he commanded. Mickey moved, and Jeff eased in beside her, mentally telling all his body parts to behave. Face the wall, Jeff said. She turned over, and he scooted up behind her and wrapped his arms around her. Mickey wriggled back against him, trying to get comfortable. When she finally settled, Jeff spoke into her ear. How's that? Any better? Much. I think I can actually sleep now. Well, that makes one of us, Jeff thought. He lay very still, listening to her breathe, wondering what his problem is, that he can't keep his mind on business. He was holding a kidnapped victim who'd been through amazing atrocities over the past week, who needed comfort and warmth from another living being, and he couldn't stop thinking about what it would be like to kiss her. He lay spooning with her, and it was taking every ounce of will to keep his mind on her well-being. Jeff, Mickey asked softly. Hmm? Do you think I'm silly or a crybaby? No, of course not. Believe me, I understand your need for closeness. So, you don't think I'm losing my mind? Not at all. Some traumas take time to overcome. You've faced a trauma, haven't you? He drew a long, slow breath. What makes you think that? Well, you keep telling me I'm acting normal. You keep telling me you understand what I'm going through. It just makes sense. Have you been through some sort of trauma? Yes, he said quietly. That's why you understand? Yes. Does it hurt to talk about it? Not anymore. She turned around to face him. Will you tell me? He peered into her eyes, which were black, glossy pools in the darkness of the room. I don't think you would want to hear about it. Oh, but I do. I really do. I want you to share it with me. Actually, I need you to share it with me. Sighing, he nodded his head. I guess I get that. He did get it. The next day after he'd been kidnapped and tortured, his best friend had held him in almost this same position and confided that he'd been through the same thing. It helped tremendously. Jeff touched his forehead to hers and then brushed his hand over her face. I was also a hostage once, several years ago, by Muslim terrorists. Well, in Afghanistan? No, I was never in the Middle East. They were Muslim terrorists, but they were right here on American soil. Well, actually, they were on a ship harbored in Savannah, Georgia. I was only held for one very long night, but it was the worst night of my life. What happened to you? I was careless and let someone sneak up behind me. We'd been searching for some kids, babies actually, who'd been kidnapped and were scheduled to be taken by ship to be raised by an ISIS satellite group. We just found them in an old warehouse, and I was so focused on the elation of finding the kids, I never heard the guy come up behind me. He knocked me out. Oh my God! I remember something about this. This happened about 4 years ago? Yeah, closer to 5. You remember it? I remember about the babies and 2 agents who were missing. Yeah, I was MIA. The other agent wasn't really missing. He just hadn't reported in because he was busy trying to rescue me. He was the one who found me. Keegan Tanner, one of my closest friends. Keegan Tanner, I remember him. Oh, you're Jefferson Davis. You remember my name? Well, that name kind of sticks in your mind. He groaned softly. My mom. She's a Southerner, born and bred. Named me after the general. Mickey giggled. Cute. Whatever. I can't believe you remember my name. I remember because I was writing at the time and thought both names would make interesting names for characters. She took a moment to snuggle in closer. So, I didn't mean to interrupt the story. Tell me what happened, please. You said they knocked you out. Yeah, they hit me in the head with something. I'm not sure how long I was out, except that it was long enough for them to take me from the warehouse to the ship. When I woke up, I was lying on the floor in what looked like an old laundry room. I was very disoriented, and it took me some time to realize I was on the ship. Were you free to move around the room? No. My hands and feet were bound, and they'd taken my clothes. Oh. She shivered as she imagined his situation. Are you sure you want to hear this? I'm sure. Were you alone? Not for long. I'd only been awake a few minutes when the misery began. These 2 guys lifted me up and hung me on some sort of hook, like a meat hook or something, and this other dude, he started asking me questions. Like what? My name, who I worked for. They thought I was CIA, and they wanted to know who I was with, and I kept telling them I wasn't CIA, but they didn't believe me. I didn't want to tell them anything else because I wasn't sure what happened to Keegan, and I didn't want to give him up in case he was sneaking around trying to find me, which was exactly what he was doing. I'm not sure that they actually needed the information they were asking about. I think they were simply enjoying causing me pain. Anyway, I wasn't giving them the answers they wanted, so they weren't real happy with me. Jeff drew a deep breath before he continued. Mickey remained silent, realizing he was gathering the courage to speak about it. Jeff cleared his throat. They used a car battery and jumper cables. He shuddered. I'd never felt so much pain in my life. Not before and not since. They shocked me until I fell unconscious and then took me down and immersed me in a tub of ice water. The cold revived me, and then they started over. I lost track of time. I was so out of it, I forgot who I was and couldn't have told them anything anyway. I didn't want to die, yet at the same time I wished for death, hoping it would bring relief. The torture, it seemed to go on, hours and hours without a break. That's how it seemed. I really don't know how long it was between sessions. I do remember the exact moment when I accepted that I was going to die. And then the moment I did, Keegan showed up and got me out of there. Oh, Jeff, Mickey uttered softly, her voice hitching on a sob. I don't remember much about anything else until I woke up on the bank of the Savannah River. All I really remember about that is I was so freaking cold. Keegan was in bad shape, too. He'd been shot sometime during our escape, but he put his arms around me trying to give me his warmth, and then, well, then I just lost it. I broke down. Oh, don't you be embarrassed when you cry or have a nightmare, because believe me, I cried, and it took me months of therapy before I could talk about it without getting pretty damn upset. Jeff, Mickey said, bringing her hands up to cup his face. What you went through. I'm so sorry you had to suffer like that. I hurt so much for you, it makes me want to kiss all the pain away. Can I do that? Will you let me? With a curse, he grabbed her hands and pulled them away from his face and pushed her over onto her back until he was practically on top of her. Will I let you kiss me out of sympathy or pity? He asked incredulously, his tone biting. No, don't do me any favors. But, oh, don't get me wrong. I want you to kiss me, and I sure as heck want to kiss you, and I've pretty much given in to the fact that that is going to happen. Just not now, and certainly not out of pity. When I kiss you, it's not going to have anything to do with sympathy and a lot to do with how a man wants a woman. I'm sorry. I didn't mean, well, I'm just sorry. He sighed heavily. Look, I know you didn't mean to insult me. You were just being sweet and compassionate, and I appreciate that because that's the type of person you seem to be. But believe me when I say, I'm okay now. I understand what you went through, Mickey, and I'm here for you, to protect you and to listen to you and to help you in any way I can. For now, though, I want you to sleep. I want to get on the road early. He looked down at her, her chest heaving, her mouth slightly open, her eyes blinking up at him, and the words, just give in to it, kept shouting in his brain. Just bend down 2 inches and kiss her. He just decided that would be his course of action. When she spoke, okay, I'll sleep. Do you mind getting off of me? His eyes closed briefly while he got himself under control. Sorry, he murmured, quickly moving to the side. Mickey turned away and scooted her bottom back up against him. Jeff's arms tightened around her, and they lay silently. Only Jeff's entire body was thrumming with need. Closing his eyes, he willed himself to relax. Not an easy thing to do when a woman as beautiful as Mackenzie Daly had her backside pressed against him. If he let her kiss him as she'd asked, he'd probably be doing things right now that he couldn't take back. It took some time to unwind, but he finally relaxed, and just when he began to drift off, Mickey's soft voice intruded once more. Jeff? Yeah. I know what you mean when you said you accepted you were going to die. All week long I cried and fretted because I didn't want to die, and then near the end, I accepted it. He squeezed her tighter. When you get to that point, it changes you. I understand that. She lay silently for a moment and then spoke softly. Thank God for Keegan Tanner. I do, every day. I guess I owe him my life, too. I mean, if he hadn't saved you, then you wouldn't have been there to save me. Well, then thank God double for Keegan Tanner, Jeff agreed. Except I didn't save you. You saved yourself. You're an amazing woman, Mackenzie. He placed a chaste kiss on the crown of her head. Now sleep. New scene. Jeff's eyes blinked open. A glance over his shoulder at the window told him it was morning, as he could see a tiny outline of light around the room-darkening drapes. Mickey had turned during the night and now had her body curled up close to him, her face pressed against his neck, her breath tickled against the hollow of his throat. He tried to slowly pull away, but she moaned and nestled closer, rubbing her nose against him as if she were a kitten. The room AC was functioning well enough, yet he began to feel his temperature soar. Giving in to temptation for just a second, he ran his free hand lightly over her shoulder, down her side, and pulled her in close. Dear Lord, please help me to be what I'm supposed to be. How he wanted to touch her. He wanted to watch her come awake, to see her eyes open as he touched her. He sighed. He also wanted more than just a quick tumble, and there was definitely no time this morning. Taking a deep breath, he pushed away from her, swung his legs over the side of the bed, and headed for the bathroom. As he emerged, Mickey yawned and stretched and opened her eyes. Good morning, he said. She smiled sweetly. Hi. We need to get on the road. Realizing his words sounded brusque, probably due to his pent-up emotions, he added a smile to the mix. Would you like to shower first? Rising, she nodded. That would be great. Thanks. He watched her pad around in the boxers and T-shirts he'd given her yesterday, gathering some of the new clothes he'd purchased and other supplies, and slip into the bathroom. While she bathed and he tried to keep his imagination from running amok, he repacked and organized their bags, making mental notes of supplies they needed. Realizing her bandaged hand would need to be redone, he set out the medical supplies. He looked up as she emerged. She'd chosen the khaki-colored shorts and the yellow tank top, and she looked sweet and fresh and clean and totally hot, and man, oh man, what was his problem? Motioning for her to sit at the table, he quickly applied clean, dry bandages. It looks good. I don't think there'll be any infection, he said. She grinned. How could there be, after wasting your expensive Grey Goose on it yesterday? He smiled. Well, all for a good cause. How's the ankle? It's sore, but already feels a lot better. We can wrap it if you'd like. No, I think it'll be okay. Well, let me know if it starts hurting. I'll be just a minute. Grabbing some clothes, he entered the bathroom and came out 10 minutes later, showered, shaved, and dressed. He stopped short at the sight of Mackenzie, sitting on the bed in her blonde wig. Apparently, it didn't matter what shade her hair was. She was amazingly beautiful. He frowned, though, as he realized she was acting strange. Mickey sat on the edge of the bed, stunned into complete stillness. Her mouth hung open, her eyes blinking at the TV. What? He asked, turning to gaze at the screen. A picture of him stared back, the one from his latest driver's license. He caught the words, wanted for questioning, in the disappearance of Mackenzie Daly. Next came a description of his truck, which thankfully was no problem since Jack had brought him a clean car the previous night. The odd thing was, instead of asking citizens to contact the police or FBI, they were directing them to some 1-800 phone number. He mumbled a curse, and grabbing one of the bags, he swept everything he hadn't already packed into it. We got to move fast, Mickey. No telling who here at the motel office remembers me from yesterday. Make sure you have your phone, he barked. Here, take this bag, leave the room key on the dresser. Mickey reached out to take the offered bag and searched the room for anything they'd missed, while Jeff donned shoes and socks, strapped on a holster and gun, and shoved 2 phones in his pocket. He threw the other 2 bags over one shoulder, grabbed the new car keys, and peered out through the peephole. Are you ready? He asked. Eyes wide, Mickey nodded. Okay, let's go. Jeff threw the door open and started down the walk, with Mickey following just behind. 5 rooms down, Jeff slowed. Oh no, the truck is gone, Mickey cried. Oh, Jack took it. We're here, he said, unlocking the driver's side door of a silver Camry. He hit the button and her door unlocked as he tossed his bags into the back seat. 20 seconds later, they were pulling onto the main drag. How did they find out I'm with you? She asked. They tracked you to my house. It's not hard to find out the owner of a home. I knew they would find out who you were with. What I can't believe is that they've plastered my face all over the news as if I have something. Did you see the news? Jeff asked Jason the moment he picked up. I didn't. However, I've been informed. I just got off the phone with the Bureau. It's not them and it's not the police. I believe it's got to be Daly taking matters into his own hands. That's why the 800 phone number. All he needs is for some concerned citizen to spot you and call in, and he'll be able to zero in on you pretty quickly. Well, fortunately, they gave a description of my truck. At least we're one step ahead of him. For the safe house, I want Mackenzie Daly near me. You want us in a Los Angeles safe house? Jeff asked. No, I'm putting her in with Eric. With Grandmaster Kino? They would never think to look for her there. Besides, the Kino's house is a fortress. No one comes in and no one goes out. Huh. No one except Jeffy, Jeff said. Yeah, I heard about that little excursion of hers. She's now Kimmy's hero. Jeff thought about Jason's 13-year-old daughter, Kimmy. Jason being Korean and his wife, Angel, a gorgeous blonde bombshell, Kimmy was destined to be the total looker that she was. She was 13 going on 21, and Jason definitely had his hands full with that one. Well, Kimmy could do worse, so I'm headed south on I-5? No, I don't want you two on the road. I'm deploying a chopper. Take Highway 99 south to the medical center in Chico. Jeff listened as Jason explained his plan of action. His eyes darted to Mickey, knowing that she would have a hard time with it, but couldn't be helped, and he needed to get the job done and over with ASAP. A little over an hour, Jeff said. I'll be there. Take care of our girl. She's the star witness. I got that. Later. He glanced at the star witness as he tossed the phone onto the console. Ever been in a helicopter? No. Why? Because Jason's decided it's not safe for you on the road. He sent a chopper to pick you up. Oh, well, this should be fun, huh? Sure, no problem at all. New scene. The moment Jason hung up from speaking with Jeff, his private cell buzzed. Noting the unknown caller, he pushed the button and held the phone up to his ear. Yeah. You the guy who found my dog? A voice asked. Yeah, that's me, Jason answered, using the slight drawl that Jeff spoke with so that they would think that they were still speaking with Jeff. I want her back. Where are you? Are you still up at the lake? Of course I'm not still at the lake. I'll give you the address, but no cops. You got that? Cops are the farthest thing from my mind. Hold on. Let me get something to write with. Jason punched a special little button on his phone, waited a few seconds before he spoke again. Okay, go ahead. The man rattled off some address in Reno, Nevada. Reno? Well, I was halfway to L.A., Jason complained. He wasn't, of course. He was in L.A. en route to his office, but he wanted to buy Jeff some time. Well, I suggest you turn around if you want this meeting to happen. Oh, and Agent Davis, the man added, bring the dog with you. Oh, I'm afraid that won't be possible, but we'll talk. I got something you want, and you got something I want. He disconnected. Jason hit another button and peered at the red readout, giving him the coordinates of the incoming call. He then pushed a button on his dashboard. Call, Mina. His secretary answered on the first ring. Yes, sir. Mina, get me the address of these coordinates. He read them off to her. I'll be at the office in 15 minutes. Just give it to me when I get there. Yes, sir. Thanks, Mina, and good morning. Good morning to you too, sir. New scene. Kurt Wells hung up the phone and then immediately called Talman Daly, who picked up on the first ring. Yes, Daly said. I spoke with him. I can't believe he actually gave me his own frickin' number. He's on his way to our little meeting. He gave you the number because he knew who she was, and he thinks he can profit. The guy has balls of steel. Talman remained silent while he thought over the direction things had taken. Well, even though he's on suspension, he's still a security agent for the Ameritech Group. He has an inflated ego. Make sure you deflate that ego a bit. He'll be expecting a confrontation. And he's getting one. I got 4 ready to help me take him. Well, make sure they don't kill him. I need him to give up where he stashed Mackenzie. They have their orders, and I'm here to make sure they follow them. I've sent Angelo and Yin to Los Angeles to get some information out of this Ameritech place. Well, don't underestimate them. They've got a big reputation, Daly warned. They're a rent-a-cop security agency. Will you mess up? I don't rescue you. I don't even know you. I won't mess up. Kurt ended the call. The moment Daly hung up, the house phone rang. Daly, he said sternly after reading the caller ID. Agent Dodge here, Senator. What can I do for you? Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to not take matters into your own hands. You plastering this Jeff Davis's face all over the media doesn't help. It doesn't help, huh? Well, the FBI has been sitting around with their thumbs up their butts. At least putting it out there might get something going. It will also warn Davis and send him into hiding, Agent Dodge responded, acting as if catching Jeff Davis was his primary goal, when instead he was keeping Daly pacified while they procured the evidence against him. Yes, well, we'll just have to see which one happens, won't we? Daly disconnected. New scene. 35 minutes later, Jeff pulled inside a 15-foot-high chain-link fence across from a hospital. A small building stood near the entrance, but Jeff didn't stop there. He drove to the far side of a large empty field with a big white circle painted in the middle. Chopper's not here yet, Jeff said. He put the car in park, but left it running for the sake of air conditioning. Pushing his seat back to give himself more room, he turned to his passenger. Sorry, we had to skip breakfast. I'll make sure you get something to eat soon. It's okay. I'm not too hungry. Jeff nodded, his eyes sweeping over her. It was time. He leaned toward her and cupped her face in his left hand. Remember last night when I told you that me kissing you is gonna happen? Yes, she whispered, her eyes blinking up at him. Well, I hadn't planned on it being this soon, but it seems it can't be helped. If you don't want this, you need to tell me now. Mickey swallowed hard, looking over Jeff's gorgeous face, her eyes flickering down at his athletic body, his broad chest, his muscular thighs, his flat stomach. She'd known him only 24 hours, and maybe it was because she'd been through a traumatic event, and he was her knight in shining armor, but she had to admit she wanted him. And she wanted his kiss, yes, but she wanted much more than that. The chemistry between the two of them was palpable, and she linked her gaze with his and gave an almost imperceptible nod. That's all he needed. His hand moved around to the back of her neck and pulled her toward him, his thumb caressing her jaw. Leaning closer, his mouth touched hers gently. She was warm and soft and oh so sweet, and he sincerely hoped the chopper was running late. Increasing the pressure on the back of her neck, he deepened the kiss. His heart sped up, his respiration doubled. Her hands reached out toward him and grabbed his t-shirt and held it tightly in her fists. He felt her body melt toward him, and she gave a soft moan, which only encouraged him. She tasted so sweet. He hadn't thought it would be possible, but his need for her increased, doubled, tripled. Pulling away, he shook his head at her. Mickey, you are amazing. I don't want to stop. She grabbed him by the shoulders and pulled him forward. Well, then don't. Don't stop. Complying, he kissed her again quickly, and the heat rose immediately, and she moaned again, and Mickey's head fell back, and she arched, encouraging him onward. I should stop, he mumbled, and she whimpered. He kissed her a long time, listening to the soft sound she made in the back of her throat. I want you, Mickey, he muttered, when he lifted his mouth from hers. I know I shouldn't. I know you're vulnerable right now, but heaven forgive me. I want you more than I've ever wanted anything in my life. I don't feel vulnerable right now, she whispered. I feel powerful. I want you too, Jeff. I need you. I need you so much. The ever-present tears welled and spilled over onto her cheeks. Don't cry, Mick. He leaned closer and kissed her deeply. I'm not crying. It's just that I need you so much. I need that closeness, that, the intimacy. Yes, the intimacy. I need to feel it. I can't seem to get close enough. He completely understood the need to reach out and to be close to another person after having been through a traumatic life and death situation. She leaned in and nuzzled against his neck. Her eyes lifted to find him smiling at her. What? She asked, smiling back. You are so very beautiful. He cupped her face and kissed her slowly and deeply. Sweet Mickey, he sighed when he ended the kiss. You are amazing. She sat up straighter. Make love to me. He shook his head. Oh, I want to, but this is not the right time. I know it feels like we've known each other a long time, but it's only been one day. Trust me, it wouldn't be a good thing. It could ruin whatever the dear Lord has planned for us. You think God has plans for us? It seems pretty evident to me. Please, she said, reaching out, placing her palm on his chest. Softly grunting, Jeff pressed her hand harder against him before he removed it from his body. Soon, sweetheart, but not now. We have company. Brow furrowed, Mickey rose up to see Jeff's truck parked a little ways away and the chopper appear overhead. She gasped. How long has... He just got here. Jack got out of Jeff's truck. Is Jack coming on the helicopter too? She asked. Yes. He opened his car door and sighed heavily. This was about to get ugly. Let's go. Mickey got out of the car while Jeff rearranged things in the 3 bags in the back seat, taking things out of one bag and placing them in another. Mickey watched as the chopper landed and Jack tossed his bag into it and climbed in. Jeff finally pulled out only one bag, took Mickey's hand, and guided her toward the chopper. He tossed the one bag up next to Jack's, then turned and took Mickey's face in his hands and kissed her soundly. And when he pulled away, her look of confusion gave way to understanding, and a few seconds later, to panic. No, she cried. She reached out and grabbed onto his shirt. Don't leave me, Jeff, please. I can't come with you right now. I have to take care of business. What business? What are you going to do? You can't go anywhere. Your face is all over the media. Someone will see you and report you. When he didn't answer, she became frantic. That's what you want, isn't it? You intend to use yourself as bait. Tears spilled over onto her cheeks. Please don't do this, Jeff. What if something happens to you? Well, that's a chance I have to take. I'm an agent, baby. You know that. I have to catch these guys who would see you dead. And I intend to bring Talman Daly to his knees for what he did to you. I don't care what he did, Jeff. Don't send me away. Mickey, listen. I know you've become attached to me. It's a completely natural reaction. But please, Jeff, please come with me or let me stay with you. Mickey, do you trust me? She shook her head. You don't? I do, she said softly, her eyes cast downward in defeat. She raised her head quickly. But But you're the only one I trust. Well, the people where you're going, they're like family to me, and they'll take good care of you. You say you trust me, so I want you to prove that by going with Jack. He'll escort you. I swear, Mickey, I wouldn't send you anywhere I thought was unsafe. She shook her head. He tilted her head up to get her to look into his eyes. Yes, Mickey, and I promise to come back to you soon. I promise. She capitulated by leaning her forehead against his chest. He held her for a few moments. I have to go now, he said softly. She looked up. Earlier, you said you hadn't planned on kissing me this soon. The reason you did was because you were telling me goodbye? Yes, sweetheart. I didn't want to leave you without having kissed you just once. You're about to do something dangerous, aren't you? She asked, the panic rising in her heart. He gave a slight shrug. It's what I do. I'm an Ameritech agent. My job is dangerous. She stifled the tears that threatened again. Are you afraid? It's a good fear, one that keeps me alive. But I'm pretty good at what I do, so fear is not really a part of it. I have to go, Mickey, so yes, I am kissing you goodbye, but just for a little while. I promise. I'll be back. He took her in his arms and kissed her again, then quickly lifted her up into the chopper. He leaned in, nodded at Jack. Take care of her. Jack nodded. You know I will. And that is the end of chapter 5.